Are you riding the blood sugar roller coaster? That's what we are going to learn today. So first of all, we will talk about what is glucose. Then we will look why do we actually need to have stable blood glucose levels and what are the signs and symptoms of carbohydrate addiction or the blood glucose imbalance. And of course, I will provide you with practical nutritional and lifestyle tips and tricks on how to beat the carbohydrate addiction. So let's dive in. In case you have never met me before, I am a science-based nutritionist with a holistic approach. So what does it mean? It means that I'm not looking only at what you eat, but also what is eating you. So I look at the mental well-being, which means like, do you have any limiting beliefs? Do you believe, oh, I have a fat gene, I have always been fat, I can never lose weight? So that is a limiting belief. Or maybe you have a brain chemistry imbalance. So maybe you suffer with anxieties or depression and you are lacking the motivation. So that's the mental part. Emotional. Maybe you have fear, anger, sadness, loneliness. Maybe you are just after a difficult relationship or breakup or difficult life situation, losing the job, and you just don't feel emotionally well. Physical well-being, it's about exercise or moving. Are you completely inactive or do you over-exercise? Nutritional. So usually it's a lack of knowledge because I know that you are doing everything with the best intention and you are buying healthy products because you think that marketing tricks just told you it's so. So that's what we look at. And spiritual. So spiritual, it's nothing to do with religion. It is whether you have a sense of purpose, some mission and vision, whether you know who you are and why you are here living this life. So that's the spiritual part. But today we are talking about carbohydrates, glucose, and sugar. And what is the difference between it? So let's say that sugar, the white powder that usually people talk about, that is sucrose. Yeah? And sucrose is a disaccharide. So it is made from two molecules. Two molecules of what? Two molecules of glucose. Glucose, the blood sugar level that we are talking about today. Yeah. So you can see, because it's only two molecules, it's not difficult to break the bond. We have enzymes and they make, and with one cut, we get two molecules of glucose. And you can see that glucose is monosaccharide because it's one molecule, but fructose, which is the fruit sugar, is also only one molecule. And galactose, which comes from lactose, is also one molecule. So all these sugars are very easy to absorb. These are simple carbohydrates. Yeah? Lactose is a milk sugar. Lactose is in dairy products, milk, cottage cheese, you name it. Yeah? And maltose is basically from rice, and you have it in beer too. When we look at the polysaccharides, so poly, it means 10 or more molecules of glucose connected together. So starch. Starch is basically a storage of energy for plants, especially the plants that are like bulb. So everything that has roots and it's in a ground. So for example, beetroot, carrot, potatoes, parsnip. It's basically more complex carbohydrate, but it's still sugar because when it gets broken down to single molecules with 10 cuts or 11 cuts or 12 cuts, it will become glucose. Glycogen is a storage of glucose in our body. So our body is ready for us to get under the stressful situation, fight or flight. and it's going to need the quick energy, the quick sugar. And because when you are running away from a tiger, you don't have time to eat, and you also don't have time to break down the fat that you are storing on your body. So in our liver, we can store 100 grams of glucose in a glycogen form. So it's a more complex carbohydrate. And we can store up to 400 grams in our muscles. So if you are exercising a lot and you have muscles everywhere on your body, the chances are that when you eat sugary food or carbohydrates, you can store this sugar in your muscles. If you don't have muscles on your body, you are not going to store this glucose, and the glucose will be turned into fat and will be mostly stored on your belly or the love handles. And cellulose is basically fiber. So here we covered what are the carbohydrates, and you can see that when I say sugar is everywhere, it is absolutely everywhere. Without sugar, the plants would not be able to grow. So sucrose was 2 molecules of glucose. And now the question is, do we need glucose? So it's easy money. It's easy sugar. And if somebody is giving you money almost for nothing, just like sitting here, me doing the video, getting the money for it, it's easy for me. And it will be the preferred source of the income or energy for me, because money and energy is the same. And if somebody tells me to go and cut something in the garden, that's going to be hard work, and I will have to spend and invest my energy to make money out of it. So our body prefers glucose because it's simple, it's easy, and the body doesn't have to spend anything. If our body needs to break down protein or fat, like avocado or nuts, it takes a lot of energy to do it. So that's why we are usually going to crave carbohydrates. And it doesn't have to be necessarily sugar, sucrose, but it can be, for example, even potatoes, pasta, bread, and of course biscuits. But biscuits are then the monosaccharides, the simple sugar. So we don't really need glucose because our body is smart enough, and in a process of gluconeogenesis, it can create its own glucose. So glucose, new genesis to create. What is the consequence of consuming carbohydrates all the time? That's a slow metabolism because the body didn't have to work. And then once you remove the carbohydrates and you would tell to your body, okay, now go on a ketogenic diet, which is very strict, and eat only fat, you're going to feel tired because your body doesn't know immediately how to create the new energy. It needs to learn. So I always say carbohydrates are like puzzle. The difference between simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates is the structure of the molecules, how many molecules it has. So if you, for example, buy white bread, which is just white flour, it's basically glucose. It's pure glucose. So it's very easy for our body to immediately absorb it into the bloodstream and spike it up. But if you eat, for example, whole wheat bread or whole wheat pasta, still it is carbohydrate, but it's like a more complex puzzle, and our body needs to take more time to break it down. So here you can see different names of sugars. So fructose, dates, nectar, juice, grape juice, syrup, agave syrup. Agave syrup is the worst because it's highly processed fructose. If you consume more than 40 grams of fructose in one sitting, the body is not able to absorb it, and it's going to cause bloating. Bacteria will create the gas, and you will be bloated and you will be farting. And it's also causing fatty liver. So vegans and vegetarians that are consuming lots and lots of agave syrup because they believe it's better, they actually end up with blood glucose imbalance, which later on, as you will learn, has impact on sex hormone, estrogen, progesterone, and even testosterone. So, how do you know if you are riding the blood glucose roller coaster? One of the signs is when you feel low energy throughout the day. Basically, this drowsiness. You cannot be bothered going for exercise to the gym or just do something, and you feel like you need to have either coffee or something sweet to fill you up and bring you up, right? And it goes up and down throughout the day. Eating usually makes it better for a little while. Also, you cannot go without food or snack for more than 5 hours. You you are actually really having the stomach cramps. You feel dizzy, irritable, shaky. It's really hard to concentrate because you feel like you need to eat something. And when it gets to extreme, which would be, for example, 7 hours, you might already have heart palpitations and really feel like you are going to faint. Yeah. So this means that your body is absolutely not prepared to do the gluconeogenesis, to create its own energy source. Also, you might often feel like to crave food, and it's definitely not broccoli, right? It's something like snacks, bread, coffee. And once you have your coffee or tiramisu or whatever it would be, or even one tiny biscuit, you immediately feel better. You have a difficulty to lose weight. You have belly fat and love handles. Chances are that you even wake up in the night because you need to go to the toilet and maybe you are even thirsty. So these might be also signs of pre-diabetic state, and in that case, I would recommend to visit your doctor. And if you also have slow healing wounds and you have high cholesterol levels, that can be, again, sign of metabolic syndrome. So maybe you have noticed that over the years, the body shape is changing. So maybe before you were kind of like more pear shape, and now you are rounded around the belly. So you have this belly fat, and maybe you even have fat on your arms, man and female equally the same, maybe even on your face. Maybe you suffer with water retention. If you have, for example, high estrogen, maybe you have noticed that your breast is going bigger, and the same for men. They are growing man boobs, right? And it's kind of saggy, it's hanging down. Maybe even the nipples are getting slightly larger. So these are the signs of hormonal imbalance and the sex hormone imbalance as well. So when you look at what is actually happening in the bloodstream when we are eating sugar. So when we eat sugar, the glucose gets released into the bloodstream. And glucose is these red balls. But glucose, it's a raw material. It doesn't mean energy immediately for us. It needs to be turned into energy. And that is turned into energy in mitochondria, which is like a energy powerhouse inside the cell. So it needs to get into the cell from the bloodstream. And for that, we need insulin. So insulin is a hormone that gets released from pancreas, from the beta cells in the pancreas, and comes and it will attach to the receptor on the cell as a protein receptor, open the gate, and then glucose can enter inside and walk into the mitochondria and can get turned into ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is basically like a currency. It's money, because our cells are not doing anything for free. Everything is paid. So for example, even when you want to contract the muscle, this myosin will ask for 3 ATP to cramp the muscle. So everything needs to be paid. When you go for a run, you are using lots and lots of ATP, the energy to actually move the body. So if we suffer with insulin resistance, what happens is that these receptors, which is like door to the cell, they just said no more, no more. And why no more? It's evening. You gave them so many carbohydrates for lunch. So many carbohydrates for breakfast. And you come, the insulin comes, knocks on the door and says, please open the door, I have for you another glucose. And the cell, the mitochondria says, no way. I still have here 1,000 molecules that you gave me before. I still need to turn them into the energy. Go away. So the insulin is suddenly desperate. It's high insulin in the bloodstream. It's high glucose, which is causing hyperglycemia, dizziness, like high blood pressure. You feel like you are going to have a heart attack. And luckily, liver, the organ in our body, is going to save it. So all this blood, of course, comes to the liver, right? Through the portal vein. And our liver is going to repackage it, take all the glucose, turn it into triglycerides and cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, and it's going to transport it into the fat cells on our body, right? Because there was nowhere else to put it. But you might feel hungry again because and low energy, because actually, even though you were eating, the energy was not created. So that is a problem when you are consuming way too many carbohydrates. So insulin resistance is basically like a cluster of disease. So it brings later on, it brings type 2 diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, atherosclerosis, which is basically the plaque in your arteries, which makes it narrower and it increases the blood pressure. So basically hypertension is a high blood pressure, and it causes dyslipidemia. So you have fat that is actually leaking the fat out, and that's why you have very high triglycerides, even though you were not eating anything all night long and you went straight to the laboratory to do the blood tests. So this is what the blood test would then look like. Your cholesterol will be high. Triglycerides are going to be over the 2. HDL is a good cholesterol, so that one we want to have high. But the LDL, basically the protein, the lipoprotein that is carrying the fat from the liver into the fat cells, might be very, very high. Yeah, so this was a very young person, I think 31, and you can see that already the cholesterol was high and already the LDL, the bad cholesterol, was high. Then, of course, you will be looking at the glucose. You want to be in an optimal balance, so sitting around 5, let's say. If you are under or over this limit, you have a blood glucose imbalance and your body is not able to regulate it. That's what you definitely don't want. And this is a really nice test, is glycosylated hemoglobin, which basically means that hemoglobin is a protein that is carrying oxygen in your red blood cells, and the glycosylated means that the glucose got attached to it, and it basically completely changed the structural and functional ability of the hemoglobin. And this is a pre-diabetic state. When you go around 6 is already alarming. This person it's good. 5.1 is very nice. Yeah. So if you have a cluster of imbalance, which would be, for example, the cholesterol levels are high, the blood glucose is out of balance, this is called metabolic syndrome, right? And you can even measure your hips and waist ratio. If you carry the fat around your mid area, that you are prone to the cardiovascular disease and the inflammation. So what is very, very important is to learn how to read the labels. And I made all the mistakes because I was thinking that if I buy Demeter, organic, and everything bio, and everything vegan and super healthy and friendly for vegetarians, that I do something good when I'm avoiding white sugar. I actually didn't know that I was getting myself in the misery. That's why I was bloated, why I was farting, why I had 16 kilos more than I have now. Because even though I was eating healthy products, they were really high in carbohydrates. So for example, I used to think that eating this Power Mix dry fruit bar with nuts every single day as a snack would be a good alternative. But look at it. It is really high in sugar, 4 grams of carbohydrates, from which 42 grams is pure sugar. Pure sugar because it's that fructose. And we saw on the previous slides that it doesn't matter if you eat glucose or fructose, it is the same single molecule. Yeah. And in fact, if you consume more than 40 grams of fructose, it's going to bypass the process. It's not going to be absorbed into the cells, and it's going to cause bloating. So what is the amount of, let's say, carbohydrates that a normal person can consume per day? So let's say that if you, for example, have 165 centimeters, you have like 60 kilos, so you are like slim, healthy and everything, 80 grams of carbohydrates would be okay. If you want to lose weight, you would of course have to decrease the carbohydrates. Ketogenic diet is only 20 carbohydrates per day, which is very, very little. I'm not saying, I'm not recommending it, okay? I think it's not sustainable. But imagine, if somebody would want to go on a ketogenic diet and they would eat one power mix, which has 54 carbohydrates and 20 is the limit, they just wouldn't be, they would never get into the ketogenic state using the ketones as a source of energy because they would be still running on the glucose. Yeah. So just imagine if you, for example, eat, so this raw cocoa chocolate, 85%, has 31 carbohydrates, but in 100 grams. You are not going to eat 100 grams. You will maybe eat half of the bar, which would be still a lot. So maybe quarter, which is 20 grams. So if you eat half, it would be 15. If you eat quarter of it, it would be only 7 grams of carbohydrates. So eating quarter of this chocolate is much better in terms of blood glucose than eating the power mix, so dry fruit. It's mostly dry fruit with a little bit of nuts. And then for vegans, it is obviously very, very difficult to keep the carbohydrates in optimal way. So look at this small yogurt, and it's already 17 grams of carbohydrates, from which 11 is a pure sugar. This is 2 spoons of pure sugar. That's a lot. And this vegan chocolate, it's an absolute disaster because look at it, it's 58 grams of carbohydrates, from which 47 is a pure sugar, compared to here 16. Yeah. So of course this was for snacks, just to show you the difference, that if you are snacking on something, still be aware that healthy doesn't mean low in carbohydrates. Now we look at something that many of my clients are buying, believing it is healthy, right? So for example, this is pasta from yellow lentils, because it claims it's very high in protein. So when we look, when they say high in protein, it's 6 grams of protein, it's nothing special. And it has 59 grams of carbohydrates in 100 grams. So let's say you will eat 100 grams of pasta, which is a normal portion, and you would want to stick to 59 grams of carbohydrates per day. Just in lunch, you would make 59. Then you would have 1 handful of almonds and 2 squares of chocolate, and you completely filled out your daily dose of carbohydrates. Everything else that you are going to eat above the limit is going to get stored as fat because your body just doesn't need it. Always imagine it's like with the car. If your car can take only 80 liters of petrol and you want to put there 90, it's going to leak over. It's going to be spilled over. Your car doesn't need it, and so does your body doesn't need it. Yeah. And the same here. I really don't like this marketing trick because it says it's a quinoa, but when you look at it, the majority, so number 1 ingredient is a rice flour. So it's basically rice because only 40% of it is quinoa. So 60 is rice and 40 is quinoa, but they don't mention rice here at all. And these are my favorite noodles. This is buckwheat noodles. So it's quite transparent. You can see what it's made from: buckwheat flour and sweet potatoes. And then there is only water. So when I was first buying them, I was thinking, wow, it's pretty healthy. Okay, I will eat it. But then when you look at the carbohydrates, 66 grams of carbohydrates, it's quite a lot. And this is actually in 80 grams because these are 3 portions, 1, 2, 3, and it's only 80 grams. So it is really a lot. So what can you actually do? What can you have for breakfast? So if you are going to exercise, you can still have some carbohydrates in the morning, but of course, complex carbohydrates. So that would be, for example, fermented oats. How do you make fermented oats? You basically soak oats either in the water or in kefir overnight, and you leave it out of the fridge, out of the fridge. Yeah, in a warm place, so on a kitchen top. And then in the morning, you can add there some cinnamon, and of course, like you can soak it overnight with the chia seeds as well, because they are going to absorb all the liquid. And then you can mix their skyr or kefir or yogurt, whatever choice you have. Maybe you like super green berry smoothie. So of course, this is not from fruit. This is made from vegetable. So it's usually celery juice, avocado, cucumber, lemon, parsley, spinach, and then you put there some berries. And that can be frozen berries. That can be blueberries and raspberries. Or you can make avocado cocoa smoothie. So you basically put there raw cocoa powder that is very high in antioxidants, and I recommend it. Or you can make breakfast muffins that would be made from either oats or almond flour. Almond flour would be probably the best, and maybe mixing it with buckwheat flour. And I love buckwheat a lot. So buckwheat pancakes, especially if you use eggs. So you can use 2 eggs, you can use kefir, which is a source of protein, and then buckwheat. So it will be high in protein. And in the morning, it's still okay to have this breakfast. If you don't exercise and if you are doing intermittent fasting, then you definitely don't want to start the breakfast with sugar, because it's like hitting it with sugar. In that case, you would want to go for eggs, spinach, frittata, shakshuka, egg muffins. And here on the bottom, it's actually a clickable link. You will find recipes, very, very easy recipes for shakshuka. There are like 4 different kind of shakshuka. And of course, sometimes you might not feel hungry at all. So listen to your body. And if you don't feel hungry at all, then just don't eat, or maybe have only half of the avocado. Who said that we must eat breakfast? We don't need to eat breakfast. Yeah? So this was breakfast. And for lunch. For lunch, I would recommend, for example, zucchini noodles, or like making noodles. And I understand if you are busy, you don't have time to do this, and you don't have the spiral maker. But nowadays, you can buy them in every supermarket. And here is like choice of soups. So whatever you eat for lunch, it doesn't matter if it's lunch, it might be even dinner, right? So when you look at the dinners, just swap accordingly. But for example, Thai soup, when it's spicy and you have prawns in it, it's high in protein, and it's actually helping you, the spiciness is helping you to speed up the metabolism and the digestion. And I really like coconut cream, because a coconut cream, it is a saturated fat, but it's a monosaturated fat, and it's actually helping to burn the calories and give the ketones, which is another source of the energy. And for snacks, of course, you want to stick to low carbohydrate snacks, like kohlrabi with tahini and tomatoes, or cottage cheese with salty buckwheat crackers, or a handful of berries and white yogurt and almonds. Yeah, so that's really nice. When we look at the dinner, the best, if you want to like lose weight and get your carbohydrate amount under control, Then you want to stick to green leafy vegetable because it's very low in carbohydrates. The full bag of spinach is only 26 calories, and you are going to burn around 100 calories just like using it, breaking it down. Broccoli, cauliflower, aubergine, zucchini, that's really low carbohydrate vegetable. And then always combine it with at least one source of protein. So what can be the source of protein? It can be 2 hard-boiled eggs, or it can be 100 grams of feta cheese, or 100 grams, 150 grams of chicken or steak, or whatever choice you have. So feta cheese is wonderful because it's a fermented cheese, and the lactose in it was basically broken down by the bacteria into lactic acid. So there is not really sugar in it. And then pumpkin seeds are wonderful. Any source of fish or turkey and butternut squash and like chicken, tofu, you name it. There's so many sources. So we look for the, was it dinner? We are already at the dinner. So we looked at the lunch, we looked at the dinner, and now we are approaching the end of this presentation. So I just want to say, take from it only what serves you. This is about awareness and accepting that maybe you are consuming way too much sugar, and maybe to prevent any cardiovascular disease and diabetes and belly fat and low mood swings and hormonal imbalance, maybe you want to look at it and see if you go around 80, but 80 is really only the general number. As I said, maybe it's 60 for you, maybe you are taller, maybe it's 90 for you, maybe you are really physically active, maybe it's 100, right? So this is very individual, and I would need to know more about you to be able to help you. So just be aware of it, accept the fact, and take action, but don't try to change everything in one go. Go step by step. So this presentation was only about carbohydrates, but that is only one puzzle into the all equation. So if you want to know more, I will have presentations and workshops also about protein and the fat. And you can join my Eat Clean, Get Lean course. It's a 4-week online course. So every Tuesday you will receive videos like this with homeworks of what you can do, and then every Thursday we will have 1 hour live Q&A session when you can ask me, you can submit your food menus and I will review them, and you can ask me questions in a group of wonderful ladies. And in those 4 weeks you can completely change your habits. We will have presentations on the food combination and portion sizes and frequency of meals, and you can learn lots and lots of things. Remember, feedback is a gift. I want to hear from you. What did you like? What you didn't like? You can always schedule a free 15-minute consultation with me to find out which program would be actually the best for you. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot, and let me know what is the one step that you are going to take right now.